you do find it, you know, I can remember sort of where things are inside of here, but pulling it all together, this is handier, this is wearable in the process. And the whole idea, when all this is said and done, is that you and I, in our social settings, will be able to see, judge, and act about those things that are necessary to do. See what's missing, see how it can and judge what can be done and act accordingly. See, judge, act. That goes all the way back to the beginning of Catholic social teaching in the 19th century with a guy who ended up a cardinal, Cardijn, C-A-R-D-I-J-N, who was a leader of Catholic social teaching in Europe at that time. See, judge, act. So at the level of social justice teaching, for the laity especially, it's to be something you can wear as you look around at the setting of your communities, whatever your gifts are and places are in society, to see, judge, and act about those things that would make a better community for human life to thrive. Make sense? Mm-hmm. It's an impressive thing to watch. And like I said, I backed into this. You know, like I almost entered a monastic community, okay, and now all of a sudden I'm teaching social justice and so forth. So like all this is a big surprise to me, and how good it is, and how good it fits with the, you know, like the psychology of self-actualization and so forth, is a pretty dynamic and special thing, a glorious thing to kind of recognize. It's Jesus telling us, in some ways, how to be good neighbors. Okay? How to love our neighbors. And this is part of this continuing nurturing of the church's life. We have some of this down instinctually, and certainly Catholic social justice teaching happened over the centuries in different ways. But it's been since the dawn of the industrial age that it's been written down and comes out in encyclicals and such. Now, that's the basics. Guess what's going to happen when we put all of these clothes on together and we rub elbows inside the pews? Not everybody's going to agree. Okay? You can be a Catholic, you can be Republican, you can be a Catholic, you can be Democrat. Okay? Surprise, surprise. Now, this is one of the real things that is going to happen. So, like, even our love for one another is going to be challenged by the practical steps each of us sees to be fitting. You know, a Republican is going to say government is bad, and a Democrat is going to say something like, well, you know, government can solve our problems. Okay? And we'll be back and forth about those things till the second coming. And this is again part of this teaching living in the hearts of people who see something differently, but nevertheless claim the same fundamental principles. All of these things would be dear to any Catholic that's going to be Republican or Democrat, it would seem to me. And all of these things would be dear to anybody who's human. Okay, so this becomes a bridge to draw people into the goodness of creation and the goodness of God's salvation. So you and I might find different solutions. One of the things that, for instance, bugs me, you know, I'm against the death penalty, but I'm also against throwing people into a sewer for their entire life. And the prison system seems to me like a sewer. Okay? The stories that come out of there are not lies, about what happens to people inside there. I'm not sure that it's a just thing to throw somebody in a sewer for 30 or 40 years. I don't know what to do otherwise, but I got to keep both of those questions open, okay? And say, well, in some ways it might be more merciful for somebody to have their life ended than to be perpetually raped inside of a jail, okay? Or have to come out of there so hardened that they lose track of their humanity, okay? Now we got to look at, the death sentence in the light of the Church's teaching too. It's just like it's a last option. Okay, it's a last option. It's a right of a state, okay, and it's a right of a state for self-protection. So you're telling somebody, I'm not taking your life out of vengeance. I'm taking your life so that, we're protected from what you have done. Okay. Anyhow, other things that we'll be wrestling about: what things do we solve with law versus how do we make an impact on the culture? Okay. Law affects the culture, true, but speaking out in public affects the culture too. Law has a kind of violence when it works its way. Okay? It says to somebody, what you're doing, you cannot do anymore. Okay? And so forth. These will be the kind of things that come up for us. And that's good to recognize, that though we'll be one heart, one mind in Christ, the practical steps for putting these things and fleshing them are going to be different for each of us. And we'll recognize different priorities by the different gifts and insights that we have inside the church. And it's a time for us to draw back and say, oh, my Republican friend is making sense, or my Democratic friend is making sense. I'm not sure if Rush Limbaugh's making sense, but anyhow, we can talk about that later. In 45 minutes or less, an intro to the social justice teaching.